So good afternoon to all of our East Coast attendees today, and good morning to those who are further west. This is Rob Love with Love & Company, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. This month's topic is focusing on the middle market, which is, I'm sure everybody knows, has been a very hot topic over the last couple of years, so much so that it's even one of the major focuses of this coming spring's Leading Age Leadership Summit conference in DC. So looking forward to that. Our game plan for today is we will begin first with a couple of logistics overviews for everyone. Then we'll go into the introductions of our speakers. And then we'll run through a variety of topics related to middle market housing, starting with kind of a broader overview, make sure we're all on the same page as to what exactly we're talking about. We'll run through a couple of case studies, really look at a lot of design considerations for today's housing. And then we'll spend a little bit of time addressing services in middle market communities, and we will wrap it up with a question and answer time period. Now, as in most webinars, the audio today is one way. That means that you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. So the way to ask questions will be to submit them during the course of the webinar using your control panel. And so on the screen you see right now, you should have a little orange arrow with your control panel, and clicking that would either open it up so you can see the choices or close it down to minimize it on the screen. If it's open, you can go down to the section that says questions, click on that little triangle to make sure it's open, and you'll see a question area at the bottom, and that is where you type the questions. Once you type your question in, just click the send button in the lower right, and the question will appear on our screen. You can ask questions throughout the webinar, so whenever you think of them. However, we will wait until the end to actually address and go through those. But you are able to put things in at any time. So I'll lead off on the introductions, even though I'm the third picture in. But again, I'm Rob Love. I'm the president and owner of Love & Company. Love & Company is a marketing, research, creative branding, and sales management firm that specializes solely in the senior living field. My role within the company is really working with clients on broader strategic planning issues, really looking at where they are today, where they want to be tomorrow, and what it's going to take to get there. So that's kind of the perspective I bring to the table. Craig.
Thanks, Rob. My name is Craig Kimmel. I am a senior partner with RLPS Architects. We're an architecture firm who has been focusing on senior living design for probably the last 50 or so years. And I've been doing it for the last 30 years. I think the interesting thing about the session today is that we here at RLPS really believe that the middle market housing and the associated services that kind of go along with that is probably our industry's biggest challenge for the foreseeable future. And so I'm really excited to be part of this panel today. Thank you. Lynn?
Thanks, Craig. My name is Lynn Daly. I'm with BB&T Capital Markets, where I'm a managing director. We do financing for senior living providers, including middle market, both for-profit and not-for-profit. I've been doing investment banking for about 15 years, and then worked on the bank side for another 15 before that, all on the nonprofit senior living side of things. We've recently merged with SunTrust to create Truist, and with that, we even have a deeper platform of products and people to service both our traditional life plan communities as well as the moderate priced housing. So with that, I'll pass it off to Beverly.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everyone. This is Beverly Asper. I am a director at Baker Tilly in our healthcare consulting practice, focusing primarily on senior living, senior housing solutions for our clients. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I think this is a rich and deep panel. I'm honored to be part of it with the experiences here on the call today. My experience is primarily in public accounting, although I do have experiences on the provider basis as well, And, you know, we work with our clients daily on issues and strategies and research related to senior housing and services. So we're actively working with clients on this very topic of middle market, and I'm excited to be with you today and just talk through some of those current experiences that we have. And I think I will go ahead and advance the slide. There we go. Okay. So we want to talk a bit about this session specifically. We've had an opportunity to present this in various forums and formats across the country over the last about 18 months. And during those sessions, we've been interviewing our audiences and asking them specifically questions around middle market. What do they feel middle market is? Do they understand it? Do they have questions about it? What are their perceptions about middle market housing for older adults? And these are some of the responses that we summarized and thought it would be kind of interesting to talk through these today. The larger the print that you see in front of you, the more of our session attendees, the more of them said the same thing. And so the larger the font, the more prominent that response was. And I think these are really interesting, and I'd like to just cover a few of these here, specifically non-existent. I think this is the one that jumps off of the page as you look at this. The majority, or a lot, not the majority, but a lot of our panelists and attendees actually said that they feel that middle market housing is non-existent. And so that's one thing that is striking, and I think is what's driving us as an industry and as a panel to really bring this message forward and have conversation around this very topic. It's our future, or my future. It's a goal, an organizational goal. And so these highlights here: flexible options, affordable market rate. As you look over these responses, and again, these are summaries from many sessions that we conducted, these are really the thoughts that our session attendees brought to the forefront and that we hope to address today during this session. One of the things that I think that this page, these words really resonate with our provider and our clients, is that this really is something that sets the stage for strategic thinking and strategy and really focusing on this whole concept as an organization. And where does this fit in? Does it fit in with your organization? Should you, as part of your mission or as part of your future, be focusing on middle market housing? And so we're hoping that this session generates some of those thoughts, and you can take those thoughts back to your boards, your management teams, and wrestle through this, like some of our audience attendees have been doing, you know, over this 18 months that we've been speaking on this topic. So use these phrases, use these words, and really start thinking about the application of this topic to your organization. And that's our hope for you today, is that we can provide just some material for you to have generative thought and conversation amongst your management teams and your boards around this important topic of how are we going to serve the middle market in the future. So let's advance to the next slide here. And as we look at this, everyone has seen so many varying demographic projections. This is one that I think is very simple, but very sound and interesting. As you look at the statistics in the box, so you have the green bar. In 2014, which is a few years back now, 7.9, there were 7.9 million seniors aged 75 plus. When you flash forward to 2029, that projection is to be double, over 14 million. So there is a large growth, you know, here in that middle market. And this middle market was defined by NIC as earning between 25 and 75,000, which again is a broad range and varies from market to market. And we'll get into a little more discussion around that. Another staggering statistic is that over half of those in that middle market group would not have the finances to afford what we consider our traditional senior living services or senior housing product that we offer today. As we think of middle market, it's important as an organization that you identify what that target might be for your organization. We've defined it here again from 25 to 75,000 of income, which is a pretty broad range. And within that range, you can even think about it from the perspective of 3 different segments that could be targeted. That entry-level middle market, somewhere from 25 to 35,000 of income. So some of those folks may actually qualify for subsidized or affordable housing, and those on the upper end of that range would not. And so that's the group that would be really that entry-level middle market. And Rob is going to talk a bit later in the presentation about pricing models for these different levels and service packages and inclusions for these models, for these different income levels. So it'll be interesting as this ties together with some of the information that he'll be sharing later. The average middle, somewhere in that 35 to 50, and then the high-end middle market around 50 to 75,000 in income. So as you think about the target market that you're serving today, or who you are pulling and attracting into your communities, it's important to think for you specifically, which of these target markets would you be serving as the middle market, depending on where you're located, where your portfolio is located, and the target that you have now for what we would call market rate senior housing and services, and then those you would be targeting as middle market. So every market, every client, every provider has to really dissect this and think about which of these targets they're really going to focus on when it comes to senior middle market housing. We did some very localized and focused, what we're calling a regional evaluation of middle market product across Ohio and Pennsylvania. And as you know, these are very deep markets for housing and services for seniors. And we wanted to just take a sampling of some of the existing middle market providers, or those providers that consider themselves already serving the middle market. So these are not your higher end CCRC or life plan communities that were included in the study. And basically, I think that the diagram here really says it all. As you look at square footage, it ranged from a very low 312 square feet up to around 1871. But the blue or gray shaded box, somewhere between that 705 to 1225 square foot was really the sweet spot. That was really the average where most of the providers fell when we plotted them in terms of the square footage that they were offering in the actual housing unit as part of their middle market offering. 996 being that midpoint. So just under or at 1,000 square feet. Just to give you an idea of what we're seeing as we did this evaluation across Ohio and Pennsylvania. Hopefully that helps set some context for the size of the housing units that we experienced when we did that study. We also wanted to break down the rent. For those that were just offering a rental plan, we wanted to take a look at what were those rent ranges on a price per square foot basis. So as you look down at, the little key here on the side, you can see that 19% of those products were offering a rental range between $1 and $1.90 a square foot. We also saw 14% offering between $2 and $2.90 a square foot, and then over half offering between $3 and $3.90 a square foot in terms of that rent range. And I know that this is a huge question that people ask every time we're working with our clients, specifically on this middle market concept, is what can we actually charge, and then how do we back into what type of product does this look like? So hopefully this gives you just a little glimpse into what some of these providers are charging. And as you get higher in that $3 or $3.90, and if you have 1,000 square foot unit, you can do the math quickly to see where that rent range is falling out. And it's getting up there with maybe some of our current life plan community monthly fee ranges. And Rob's going to touch more on some of these rental ranges and service packages in his piece. We also wanted to take a look at those who were considering themselves middle market yet offering an entrance fee plan and a monthly fee. And this gives you a little bit of a flavor for that range of what they considered the entrance fee to be, even for the product they were classifying as middle market, between $65,000 and $100,000 in an entrance fee, and then monthlies ranging as low as $650 to $2,300. So you can just get a sense window of pricing, at least in our 2-state study, that really weigh in on what a middle market price range product might look like. And again, square footages and entrance fee group between 5 and 1231. We have one for-profit provider profiled for you, and I'll just go through this very quickly, but 145 rental units. You can see a profile of the product at the bottom of the page here. Prime Senior Living in Knoxville. This is just one that we decided to profile that was under construction at the time. 1 to 2 bedroom apartments, nothing more, nothing less, no studios, just 1 to 2 bedroom apartments, starting at $23.95 a month. They are actually offering 3 meals in that price, but they have all of the upgrades in this new product, including the granite, the stainless steel. They have activity spaces, et-cetera. So just to give you an idea of one provider that is advertising and marketing themselves as middle market and what they're including in their offering. Also, I think this is kind of fun to think about. You know, as you're thinking strategically about the potential of developing or offering middle market in your communities that you serve, how do you find those pockets of middle market seniors that might actually, or upcoming generation seniors that might be able to afford or be more interested in this product or able to afford this rather than a full life plan community? So I would encourage you to do your research and find them. There are ways to even use, you know, this is an example of a computer generated model that actually identifies where those folks are located and prioritizes the locations by hotspot. So it's just something exciting to think about. You know, you don't have to be the one to go out and find the site. Like, you can use technology to actually help you identify where some of these pockets of your target market might be located. Other considerations, and these are some of those strategic, you know, and practical things that we have to wrestle with, is what geography are we going to serve? What is the style of the product? And Craig will get into some of that in his piece. How does it complement or compete with our current offering? You know, are we already offering technically some middle market product on some of our campuses? And we're, you know, we have clients wrestling with that. How do we balance that with our life plan community and then developing something new in the middle market space? What would the service package be? How would we limit it and make it different than our life plan community, yet compete with other offerings that are out there? Should it be a satellite? Should it be on the same campus? And what are some of the ramifications of that with our existing residents? And these are all real live conversation points and things that need to be thought about as you're considering middle market. And then how do we link to community resources so that we don't have to build space for every potential activity or service that we would want to include in our service offering to this market? So these are all like the common themes of discussion that we have to address as providers when we're going through a planning process around middle market. And in terms of the market study, I would just encourage you to be sure and focus on studying the market once you've identified it, to make sure that you are designing a middle market product that fits in that space, that's competitive, priced at the right price point. And these are really important factors that come out of the market research. It's really important to understand the context of the marketplace that you're in and how the middle market product fits into that marketplace. And I think with that, I will turn it over now to Lynn for some additional discussion around some case studies.
Thank you, Beverly. I'm going to try and forward here. As Beverly mentioned, we have been going deeper and deeper over the past 18 months or so into the middle market product because it's been a huge request of our clients to explore more. So one of the things that we've done here at BB&T is put some time and resources into it in terms of interviewing and going out and visiting campuses and talking to those who currently provide middle market and seeing what they do right, and what we can learn from those who are currently in that marketplace. So I'll be sharing a couple case studies, but the first couple slides will be talking about Levers for Success and what we're seeing. We are seeing an increase in the number of our client base who are looking to get into this market, mainly because of the demographics that Beverly shared with you. It's a growing market and the supply is not as deep. And some want to get in, as Beverly mentioned on her word chart, one of the words that came out when we polled the audience was my future. One of our clients is looking to get into the middle market area because they want to provide housing that their staff and they can afford going forward too. So it's interesting to see the mission come out, and the population that they want to serve is the main reason for folks wanting to get into this area. It is predominantly a rental market. It is a very different operating model than your traditional life plan communities. And I can't stress that enough. It's got to be intentional, a different mind frame when you're getting into it. You shouldn't work with your same team in terms of development and architects that did your life plan community and just scale it down. It needs to be intentional in terms of apartment building, scaling it up that way. It's occupancy driven versus entrance fee driven, so you need to turn the units quicker. It's just a different mentality. And likewise with the services and amenities that you layer onto it. It's predominantly IL. There's a couple developers that do have AL in there, and then they'll build a kitchen. And the AL obviously helps the higher margin there, helps pay for the kitchen, but it's a predominantly independent living building. And it's a huge way to expand your mission and expand the number of residents that you can serve. In our interviews, we found several levers for success. Surprisingly, scale is one of them. Some have a minimum of 120 units. Some will have a minimum of 150 that they would look at before they can make it work financially. It will all depend on the market study, as Bev talked about, but it does need to be sizable to make it work financially. Consolidated common spaces, there is not going to be a dedicated wood shop and definitely not a pool. There will be multi-purpose rooms. And fewer customizable options. That's something that Craig will talk through. And the a la carte services, instead of just offering things up, it's going to be more a la carte. We'll talk about that in one of the examples. But it's the little things like the building and the care that you can charge a little extra and not just include it like you would with your traditional life plan community. There's typically either no food plan or a low food plan. One of the providers that we visited offers a continental breakfast. It's $1 a plate. So you can do it and be seen to be offering food, but do it in a very cost-effective manner, because the ultimate goal on all of this in terms of peeling down the services and amenities is to be able to keep that rent low to be able to service the market that you're looking to get into here. The biggest thing that can impact the cost of a project is the speed to getting it up, so you can minimize the capitalized interest as well as the land. We're working with a provider right now in Ohio that has their sponsor has land on a church, so they're going to get the land really cheap, so they're able to build that moderate priced housing on the church property and save some costs there, again with the ultimate goal of keeping your monthly rents down. So we're going to look at a couple examples. National Church Residences is in Ohio. They have both entrance fee and rental in their portfolio, so they're a good one to look at in terms of what do you offer at one versus the other. Inniswood Village in Westerville, Ohio is opened in 2018 and has been a huge success on the independent living side. National Church Residence does have a lot of rental in their existing portfolio, so they kind of have a leg up in terms of understanding the rental market and not having to have a huge change in mind frame in terms of how to operate and turn units quickly, because they do have that rental experience. I put some pricing there. They're around the $2.66 per square foot, to go back to Bev's pie chart. So a very attractive price point at the $1,800 a month for some of their units. And they do charge extras. So this is an example. They'll charge for storage or parking. They do have a declining meal balance that doesn't roll over. So again, little ways to save on that monthly rent, but still offer the services that you need. And they do have a entrance fee community not far away from there. The second example is Crestview. Crestview has the full continuum in Columbia Heights, Minnesota, and they recently built a new facility in Blaine, Minnesota. The Blaine, Minnesota has 66 independent or moderate priced housing units, but they also do have assisted living on that campus. So the total project is 152 units. They have a security deposit of $500, so not an entrance fee, and their monthly rates are some of the lowest of the ones that we surveyed. And this ranges to $1.62 to $2 a square foot. So very low end, which serves their market well there. And they're able to economize because they're able to use a lot of the shared services that they have on their full continuum down in Columbia Heights to help in the Blaine campus. So you do have economies of scale there to keep it affordable. And then finally, Presbyterian Homes. I'm not able to, here we go. They are a large provider with 46 communities in the Midwest, of which 16 are moderate price. They see it not as a CCRC model, but more a housing with services. Pres Homes likes to bifurcate the market. They look at rent between the 40% to 80% of the median income, and then they further bifurcate it, as Beverly showed before, in the low middle, mid middle, and higher middle. To give you some points of reference, their high middle is the 60th to 80th% of the median income. The rates that they charge, our target to charge, are somewhere around $1,750 a month for that rental. The 40th to 60th percentile, which is more your mid-middle, they try to get to $1,250 a month. So it gives you a feel for what they are looking to charge for their product in their communities. They tend to build their communities where they have a hub and spoke ability. So it's within a 6-mile range typically of either one of their campuses, or at least an area that's got robust home and community-based services, which could include primary care, home care, hospice. And then they also are able to have economies of scale with their leadership team, consolidated back office, et cetera. So those are a few examples of providers that are doing moderate price housing and doing it well. I'm going to pass it off to Craig, who will talk about the architectural point of view on the moderate price housing. Craig?
Thanks, Lynn. All right, so today's middle market housing, when we as architects start kind of thinking about what that means from a design perspective, oftentimes we start with kind of the building block, which is the unit, and what is the size of that unit. And you've heard some discussions earlier from Bev and Lynn about kind of where that sweet spot is in terms of size. Certainly that varies depending on what the goals of the community are and what area of that middle market you're actually trying to hit. This is an example of the Heritage at Lohman in South Carolina, where they had a fairly low slung kind of type of development in their life plan community. We're looking to expand that product with some middle market product, and really started with a very fundamental idea of, we're going to build a really basic 1-bedroom apartment. We're going to allow that to kind of expand to a 2-bedroom in some of the units, but the building block, if you look at the two plans, are basically the same. So repetition is certainly one of those things that we're looking at to create economies when we do these types of projects. You'll also notice there is no garage, so we're not providing a structure for the car. What they have done is provided a little golf cart patio out the back of the unit plan in order to accommodate some internal circulation on campus. But one of those fundamental toggles is, are we really going to cover the car? As we kind of look forward then to some of the other kind of unit plan options that are out there, one of the things that we're seeing more and more communities look at because of the challenges with these really small existing apartments is, could that actually become our middle market product without necessarily building a separate product that's designated as middle market? So we've been doing a lot of studies on and development of different concepts around these very small, sometimes studios, sometimes one-bedroom apartments, and can we make them more livable to make them marketable to this mid-market product or this mid-market group of people without necessarily completely kind of creating something new, so that they become more integrated within the life plan community, recognizing the contract type and the service options are still going to be much different than their neighbor that might have a full life plan community offering, but it allows you to kind of rethink about some of your smaller, older products that might be out there. As we kind of look at what this looks like in a traditional form, we can renovate those, create the bedroom beside the living room space, open it up to create a great room. Those are pretty typical kind of things that kind of can be done in a unit like this. Results in a kind of a perspective from the outside corner of the living room looking back that might look something like this, where you have that open kitchen and you're really trying to take advantage of every square foot that you have in the plan. So the use of pocket doors with translucent glass and other things to make the unit feel bigger than it really is are certainly things that we can do. But we're also looking at some of the more contemporary, more urban layout designs and seeing whether those have applications into a plan like this, where we actually, in this scenario, create the living space across the exterior wall and inboard the bedroom, so that during the day you really can take advantage of that entire exterior wall and that living space and really make it feel like a much bigger unit. So those are some things that we're studying. They're certainly more contemporary in their design character, but as the boomers are kind of reaching this age, we're seeing more and more of this desire to be a little bit more contemporary, and we believe that it really has some benefit, some ability to kind of create a product that is valuable and can meet that market demand, even though it is a fairly small unit. And at that 550 square foot size, obviously that's on the low end of that range that Bev talked about, but it's still something that may have some viability in your market. Certainly, we're looking always at satellite opportunities. Are there kind of other buildings in your community that have kind of outlived their useful life? And is there a potential to kind of repurpose those kinds of communities into retirement communities? This is an example in Pennsylvania where we had an old factory building and we're able to basically reinvent that into a mixed use product where not all of this, certainly the piece in the front is more condos and retail, but as you move into the back areas of the building, you're able to do more mid-market product as well as some other just open market rate housing. So being able to incorporate some of this mid-market into mixed use redevelopments is certainly something that is happening, and we're seeing more of that kind of develop over time. Another example of this is a project we're doing for the Phoebe organization up in Emmaus, where pretty typical 3-story office building box on the edge of a town, so it has connectivity back into the social center. Really, we're taking the building and cutting a hole in the center of it so that it becomes almost a donut, and that allows us to really reinvent the building as a mid-market housing product on that campus. And then on the backside, actually building some additional housing that's new to complement the existing so that we could get enough density on the site to create scale. And scale is one of those things that is very important when we start looking at what mid-market housing is in terms of new build and how much do we need in order to really make something work. That's certainly one of those things to think about. I would say another thing is if you're not going to go 1 story, try and go 3 or 4. because you're spreading those vertical circulation costs over more units if you can go with a higher density, larger building that is a little bit taller. But 4 stories still allows you to stay in the kind of the world of wood framing. So one of the other things as we think about services, not just the building product itself, the technology and the ability and the ever expanding technology that allows people to potentially get more and more services or integrated into their living environment, providing a really strong backbone that allows for that technological advancement to occur, which hopefully allows you to kind of minimize some of those service costs associated with higher care over time. You know, and the technology is ever changing in terms of fall protection, heart rate monitoring, all of these things that can start to become proactive in terms of you understanding how that person is aging and what might need to be done for them before some event actually occurs. I think as we go beyond the unit and we start thinking about building a building and what as competitive from a cost standpoint as possible, you know, a lot of things that we talk about are really very much in kind of a builder mindset. So we talk about rectangular forms and simple roofs. We talk about larger buildings to try and create that sense of scale and the density that's needed to try and create some commodity in that. We like trying to keep the balconies, if we're doing balconies, as kind of innies as opposed to outies, so that we're really allowing that to occur under a very simple roof instead of building a whole separate structure on the outboard side of the building. And then trying to do wood and 13R, which is a more residential sprinkler system, as much as possible, again, to try and minimize cost. One of the things that we're also considering, which goes a little bit against 13R, is designing some of these buildings under the I1 building code as opposed to R2, which allows you to potentially license these as assisted living or personal care in the future. So as you're starting to do some of the early design work on a project like this, think about what that ultimate care level might actually be inside the building, and try and accommodate that as much as possible in defining what the building is when you first build it. Certainly, we're looking at all kinds of strategies to try and minimize upfront costs, but we're still recognizing that as providers, you're looking for a building that you're not just flipping. So this is a building that's going to be yours for a long time. So return on investment and looking at systems in the building really becomes pretty critical because of the cost of money. So that upfront cost really does become a pretty strong driver as we start looking at how these buildings get designed and put into place. Minimizing masonry and trying to do as much out of wood frame as possible. We're doing more and more with panelized construction. There are more and more companies out there that are starting to panelize, recognizing that labor costs in most markets are starting to really become a significant challenge, both in terms of cost and also in terms of availability. So we're just seeing this as a response to that. And in most markets, you're able to find companies that can panelize pieces, if not whole sections of buildings at one time. And then finally, as you move into the actual living space, we talked a lot about commodity and trying to pick products, not a lot of options, but we try and pick products that are very, very off the shelf. So something that is easily purchased, something that you can buy in bulk, not doing a lot of unique one-offs in the design, trying to be as repetitive as possible in order to try and drive those overall costs down. And that doesn't mean it doesn't look good. It just means that you're being more conscientious and selective with product lines that you're using. And we like to say that the customization is just not where we want to go. We want to try and do as much in a kind of a Home Depot or Lowe's environment from a product selection as possible. And then finally, as we get into some of the other areas, when you think about windows and other amenities, we try and simplify as much as possible. Double hung windows, even single hung windows, are less expensive than double hungs. And in a seniors environment, almost none of the seniors ever open the top sash anyway. So as long as we can get it in a situation where it's cleanable from the inside, it's just a lot less expensive to go with a single hung window. Ventless dryers are coming a long way. They're happening everywhere in condo environments, especially in multi-story urban conditions. But we're seeing the advancements there, which really you may pay a little bit more for the piece of equipment, but you're eliminating all of the ductwork to the exterior wall. You're avoiding the kind of the lint maintenance that's associated with a dryer. And those things really start to kind of add up on the operation side over time as well. And then when we move beyond the units and start talking about outdoor or kind of amenities for these types of living environments, and I think Lynn mentioned it before, think broader. Try and think about those potential partnerships in your greater community that you can partner with that allow you to try and not build as much square footage because it's expensive to build, and any time you can minimize 100 square feet because of something else that you're able to do in lieu of that square footage, it just drops to the bottom line, and it helps make that product more economical. Rob, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Greg. So I'm going to go on a side note just real quick here. There was something I meant to say at the beginning that didn't. Just want to make sure everybody knows that we are recording this webinar, and when that recording is finalized, everyone who's attending today, and actually everybody who signed up but didn't attend, was not able to, we will send that out to all of you via an email link to it, so that you will not only have the slides, as a few people have asked so far, but you will have the entire webinar to reference. So just want to make sure everybody knew that, because sometimes we have people who have to sign off a little bit early. All right. So in this section, I'm going to pick up on things that Beverly and Lynn and Craig all touched on in some perspectives, but try and wrap it together in a couple of ways. And one of the key questions often is, so what services do we actually need to provide, and how do we do that, and how much or how little? Because so many life plan communities are looking at this and coming at it from the perspective of where we've been over the last 20, 30 years is adding more, adding more, adding more to what we offer. And now we're definitely talking about looking at offering less, offering less, offering less. So there are a couple of significant it depends to the whole thing. Of course, the first main one is what Beverly was talking about, like what is the market segment and what is the target rent level that you are looking to serve. That's the biggest driver. And we'll touch on that. A couple other significant factors, though, to consider are you looking at doing a moderate middle market community as a standalone on a separate location, say a satellite type of community, or are you looking to add this product onto an existing community campus? So there are different ways to look at and think about services in relation to either of those options. The other question we're going to spend a little bit of time on is healthcare, because I think that's something a lot of people wrestle with. The whole life plan community model is built around having that umbrella in place in case needs ever occur. And the middle market product is really pretty much just a minimal services, have a secure, safe place to live with access. So how do we deal with that? We're going to touch on those couple of things. So early on, Beverly talked about three different segments of the middle market. The entry level, which was like the 25 roughly to 35,000 segment, the average, which was the 35 to 50, and the high end middle market, which would be the 50 to 75 range. And really, I just feel like it's kind of stating the obvious, but just we'll walk through this, is the service package depends on where you are targeting and what your market niche is. Certainly the constants are home maintenance, landscaping, snow removal, all of those types of very basic things. But even when you get to things like housekeeping, if you're aiming at the entry level and you're looking at a target income rate that might, not income rate, but rent rate that might be $1,000 to $2,000, you're really not going to be able to afford, a regular housekeeping service within that. But you want to have these services available. Same thing with dining. A kitchen is really expensive. A commercial kitchen is really expensive to develop. Those entry-level communities, it simply may not be affordable. But as you move up in the target to the more of the average, or particularly on the high end, middle market, and I know that sounds a little bit like an oxymoron, but as you move up in those income ranges, depending on where you're targeting, you also increase what you're able to offer and bundle in to the point where when you're looking at that high-end middle market, it really starts to look a lot like what many of our more moderate full life plan communities might be charging. And Beverly shared an example early on of that one for-profit provider where the entry starting point was, entry rental was roughly about $2,400 a month. And again, I want to emphasize that what middle market is so relevant to the market area you're in. The middle market in a Boston suburb or in Northern Virginia is very different from the middle market in Centerville, Ohio, or East Lansing, Michigan. So that the demographics are just totally different. What she presented, I think, would be very likely fall in this high-end middle market category and would probably have more of these service packages. But again, if you're in a market that can afford that and there's depth there, what we need to remember is a lot of times that 50 to 75, we think, well, that's how we normally qualify somebody to live in a lifetime community. But we need to remember a significant portion of this middle income market does not have the assets to be able to afford a large entrance fee payment. They may have the income to afford the rent, but not the entrance fee payment. So there still is a significant part of that higher income, if you will, segment that simply cannot afford our markets. That's part of the whole way of thinking about service package delivery. Another thing that's important to communicate is what Craig mentioned. And when we say available, like housekeeping and dining, it doesn't mean that you have to have the commercial kitchen and be prepared to serve. These services can be provided through partnerships with community area providers, the existing restaurants or other types of services. So there's definitely an opportunity to be creative in how we look at service packages for these types of communities. Now, as I noted earlier, there are some nuances to how you think about all this when you look at adding a middle market that's highly likely to be a rental product onto a campus that is a full, most likely entrance fee life plan community. And how do you structure the service package here when you have all those services that are already there? You've got dining rooms, you have full fitness centers, you have a maintenance staff, you have a housekeeping staff, all these types of things. So how do you differentiate in a meaningful way between a life plan community resident who might be paying $3,000 a month for that 1,000 square foot residence, and a middle market resident who might be paying $2,000 or less for that 1,000 square for a similar size resident? How do you really differentiate between those two products? And the key becomes, as several people have touched on through the course of today, the whole question of a la carte. And all the things become unbundled. You move to the Life Plan Committee, you get this full service package, everything's included, and there are going to be financial advantages to doing it that way to the prospect, to the resident, of having this bundled package. To the middle market, it becomes more a la carte and being able to add on as you need. And the challenge there becomes, how do you make sure that middle market resident doesn't feel like a second-class citizen? You come into the dining room and the Life Plan Community residents go and eat and walk out, and the middle market residents come in and get a bill for their food. And the secret really to all of this is technology, as it is to so many other things. And the technology is there for everybody on both sides to have a fob system. And most Life Plan Community dining programs now are either already at more of a declining balance program or moving in that way. So you do have to track what people have each meal anyway. And so you have both people come in, they both order their meals, and your Life Plan Community resident, you scan the fob, it deducts it from their declining balance. The middle market resident, you scan their fob, and it charges it, adds it to their monthly bill. But there's no difference in treatment of people, just like you walk into the fitness center. The Life Plan Community resident scans the fob, and they come right in, and the machines are ready to, bring up their fitness routine and all the things that they've been doing. The middle market resident comes in, they scan the fob, and it pops a $5 charge onto their account for using it. All those types of things are possible so that there's no real difference in treatment of residents from one versus the other. Technology becomes a key part of that. So that's really the general services side. We'll shift a little bit now to the healthcare side. And really, the way any middle market program works, so the majority of them work right now, is if somebody ever needs healthcare, it's totally on a fee-for-service basis. It's a very standard approach. If you need to move in to assisted living, you would apply for residency, be financially qualified, and move in. Same thing on the skills side. And if you run out of income and you're in skilled, you become a Medicaid or a Medicare patient. Now, I know that's a challenge for a lot of our Life Plan communities. Do not take Medicaid. So this becomes the key board question type of discussion point. If you want to get into this market, what are the things you have to think about and what are your trade-offs? And maybe you don't provide that level of health care to that part of the market. But they're all decisions to evaluate on the way. I'm going to jump off here for a second because it's a question that almost always gets asked during conversations about this. And it's the old, well, if we offer a middle market product, what do you do if a resident runs out of funds? And do you have to just kick them out? Again, my favorite answer, it depends. How are you going to think about it? How are you going to approach it? What's important to you and the board? What I believe is, from the perspective of creating a benevolent care fund, most communities would have a far better chance going out into the greater community and raising money for a middle market product to develop a benevolent care fund to support that than they would be raising money for what is often perceived as, the rich people's home, which is the full agency Life Plan community. But that's just sort of an aside there. There's definitely real questions to be explored along the way. But what I want to throw out today, and this is truly more in the idea stage, because I think it's an opportunity for the senior living field to really explore and work on. And that's to look at taking a continuing care at home contract, that many people refer to as life care at home, and layering that on top as a separate contract option that a resident could choose when they move in as a way to provide for their future healthcare needs. You certainly could make it mandatory, and now you create a new sort of moderate version of a life care community, some new variation of that. But that's not really the direction we're talking about here. We're really seeing this as more of an an optional type of thing for those who really want to plan that way. So just to step back for a second and make sure everybody's comfortable with that concept of the continuing care at home program. You know, the centerpiece of those programs are a personal care coordinator that develops truly a personal relationship with each of the members of the program and is able to help them proactively address and move through addressing their healthcare and other needs that will enable them to stay at home as long as possible. Programs include many other things, including transportations, meals if necessary, and full or partial coverage. It's basically an insurance product in many ways for home health or assisted living or skilled care. The philosophy of the program is, of course, to enable people to stay home as long as possible without having to move to a higher level of care. And quite frankly, those programs are more successful the more people that they are able to keep out of those higher levels of care, which is a very different philosophy than a lot of life plan communities where for years it was okay, they're struggling a little bit in independent living, it's time to move them to assisted and the higher rate. And then it's time to move them to long-term care. It's really flipping it all around and saying, what can we do to keep that person in their home? And pulling from some statistics done by A.V. Powell and Associates in their annual Continuing Care at Home benchmarking survey, for those programs that have been around more than 10 years, so they're very well established, decent basis of members, the proportion, I should say, of their members who are actively, quote unquote, in benefit, meaning they are drawing on home care or home care or in-home services of various sorts, or being in assisted living or skilled, it's less than 15%. So the programs, while they're still kind of early and there's not a huge amount of data, there's still more longitudinal studies needed on that. You know, it's looking very promising. And I think where this really fits with the middle market concept is when we start looking at what it costs to be a member of the Continuing Care at Home program versus what it may cost to move into a life plan community under a full life care contract. And life plan, life care contracts, again, vary significantly from market to market. But I would say that on average, and the additional amount you might pay to go from a fee-for-service contract to a life care contract in community would be, at least somewhere around $50,000 a month. For the entrance fee, and $1,000 a month. Some markets it's going to be significantly more, others might be a little bit less. But when you compare that to the cost for continuing care at home program, and here I'm pulling from costs from Navigation by Salem Town in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. If you become a member in their all-inclusive plan and you're a typical age 75-year-old applicant, that membership fee is going to be right around that ballpark of a life care cost, but your monthly fee is only about $560. It's significantly less. And I think it's important to note, as the note there at the bottom shows, that an all-inclusive plan covers 100% of home health, homemaker, live-in companion, as well as assisted living and skilled nursing care. So it's a very broad package. And if that member wants to share the risk, as many do, and choose a copay, 50% copay option, then the rates drop even significantly further. So you look on the far right, particularly if someone's moving into a rental community, the ability to pay the $36,000 versus a multi-$100,000 entrance fee and $430 a month on top of rent, I believe that could be a very affordable option that's worth our field exploring more. And the reason I say it's worth our field exploring more is that there are a number of programs that are not ramping up and growing membership as fast as they had anticipated or hoped. I think we need to do a little more work, and there are several people doing more work to explore this. And there may be some ways that product can be fine-tuned, but I think another big part of it is that there is no national recognition, like there is with long-term care insurance, of what continuing care at home is. So I believe there's an opportunity for us as a field to get behind this program and really educate consumers and bring it to market. So sorry if I sounded like I was on my soapbox for a while there, but it's something I really believe could be a strong plus for that middle market product. So as we look back over what each of us shared today, everybody talked about a number of key points, but trying to draw out the most important things. Step one, as Beverly talked about, do your homework. Understand what that market segment is. Where is that depth? What income level do you have to hit? What fee levels do you have to hit? Because that then drives the rest of your planning. That next step in the planning is the programming. You know, based on those target income levels you're shooting for, what does that program look like? What amenities can you afford to bundle in? What services can you include? Extend straight into the things Craig was talking about from a design perspective. Once you know that target level, you have to aim at the construction costs and do everything possible to plan that building to get there. And then the closing thought is, yes, in the programming, we may have to strip out certain services from being part of bundled into the fee package, but don't be afraid to approach them on an a la carte basis. And technology makes it easier to track and also makes it really much more feasible for a Lifeline community to offer this as a new product on an existing campus, if that's the direction you want to go. So that's the main body of our discussion today. And we're going to take a look at some of the questions we have. Question, Beverly, I'm going to direct this towards you. On the entrance fee slide, way back in your section, I think you showed some typical entrance fee ranges along with monthly fee ranges and so forth. The question is, are those entrance fee prices under a 90% or a zero repayable contract?
The entrance fees that we profiled were at 0% refund when we did that study across Pennsylvania and Ohio. And I was thinking about saying that when I was on that slide. So just make that assumption that that's a non-refundable fee.
Okay, I agree. I think that makes sense. So one of the questions, if you go to the one above that, says, are there CPE questions for this webinar? I'm going to guess that what that question means is for continuing education credit. Today's webinar is not available for CEUs or continuing education, but we in 2020, Loving Company is updating our approach to be able to offer CEUs for webinars whenever possible. So it's a great question, and it's something that we've heard a lot and are trying to respond to. There's a question that I'm going to believe here is intended a little bit more as a rhetorical comment than necessarily a question. But when some of the rent ranges were shown, there was a comment made that some of those really, cannot be considered middle market or really may not be affordable. And and how do we bring the cost down to $1,875, for example, a month, and not $3,000 a month? I tried to get at that, and I had actually seen that question along the way. I tried to get at that in my section where I was trying to address that what the middle market is very different in different markets. And then we talked about the service package and construction as things to really look at once you know what your target is. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, any of the other panelists on that, but the ultimate question of this statement was how to get the cost down to, say, $1,875 a month.
Well, this
Okay.
is Deb. I'll go ahead and chime in there, Rob, real quick. I know this is a tough one, and those ranges when you saw those $3 to $3.90, that really is getting up into what we would consider a average monthly fee at a life plan community, or even maybe at the high end. So you have to really balance that with what services are included. And again, when that study was conducted, those were providers who identified themselves as middle market providers. They were expressing that that was their target. Some of those may, from our perspectives here as a group, everyone on the phone, like we may look at those communities and say, oh, that's really more like a lower end life plan community or something like that. So you have to just keep those in context. And I think we also need to be aware that when we look at rent ranges and Census Bureau indications of how much money people can spend at different income levels, we have to take into account the market that we're in, whether those folks have an asset to spend down as well. And a lot of folks are set on that. It's 30% of income, and that's all that they can afford. And that's not necessarily the case. And the layering on of the services, as Rob was talking about with the a la carte services, can really help bring those rent ranges down. So they're stripped down to just rent ranges versus rent plus potentially other services that are wrapped in. So I think it's really breaking it down and looking at what is the lowest you can get that rent for the actual home with no services, and then what do you have to layer on to make it an attractive offering in the market that you're in. And it's there's no magical formula, and every market is very, very specific.
Great. Thank you, Beverly. The next question, are there any efforts to address the middle market issue with assisted living only providers? I have to admit, I've not seen much of that. I know it comes with an inherent challenge. Are any of the other panelists aware of middle market assisted living?
I have not seen that either. I've seen, for example, Crestview does have assisted living in their middle market product, but it's not the rent differential between their assisted living is not significantly different than the rest of the market. So I wouldn't really necessarily call it middle market assisted living. So no, I have not seen that.
Rob, this is Craig. I have not seen it either. I think primarily because assisted living is a little bit more service centric than just housing centric. So I think it becomes a much more difficult thing to start carving out services in an assisted living environment to create a lesser product.
Agreed. Thank you. All right, the next question is the middle market, Bev, I'm going to direct this your way, I believe. The middle market demographic is an income range provided. Do we assume there's also an average net worth as far as additional savings, assets, et cetera? Was there an average you found when completing these studies?
I think I'm understanding your question. Yes. So in your market work, when you're doing your research, and we see the list of who's on the call here, and I'm sure there are others that would advocate for this as well. Make sure that you're looking at the net worth of the target market that you've identified as the target you're going to call middle market. Net worth statistics and data is available. You can dice it and slice it, and it's definitely something that you should consider along with the income. Another way of doing that is to look at the percentage of folks in your market that own a home, looking at average home values. You can look at current, list prices and median and average selling prices in your market. You can also do very specific, almost like neighborhood drill downs to see where is your target market living and, what are their home values, and understand a bit more about that asset base that they may bring with them. And that's why there's no magical formula to say, well, it has to be 30% of their income because that's all they can afford, because these folks may have homes, and they likely do have homes. Some may also be renters, and have been lifelong renters. And again, that gets into the specifics of the market that you're looking at. So there definitely should be a focus and consideration of their net worth, which is basically that, pot of money that they're bringing in with them when they move into your community. So everything they own minus their debt, and their real estate is included in that net worth figure from the census. So it's out there and definitely should be considered. We wrap it into every one of our planning market studies to make sure our clients understand what's going on in their marketplace.
Great, thank you. Next question. In market rate entrance fee communities that have smaller units, how do you deal with the fairness issue offering a rental for those while other residents must pay an entrance fee for access to the same amenities and services? And I'm looking at the timestamp of when this question came in, and I'm thinking it may have been before I got to the slide on like using the fob and differentiating and making things a la carte. But that's really my response there, just in a short version, is that you really look at the service package that a rental resident, and let me back up. I'm understanding this question to be not where we talked about having a rental community, a middle market as a separate building on a campus, but this is literally being in the same building, all the same residences. One of them might be entrance fee. Somebody might be living in the exact same size one under a rental contract. So I come back to that same, I would use the same thought process to address that, which is you have to create a differential between the two and really look at what services are included in that rental fee for the rental resident. And it would be different from those that are automatically bundled in for the entrance fee resident. And then you can charge a la carte extra for those. Next question. As a not-for-profit provider, generating the equity contribution to finance one of these rental-only kind of projects is tough. Lynn, this sounds like it's headed down your way. This has served to push us towards the entrance fee concept to generate the equity pool. What are some creative ways of generating that equity within the constraints of a not-for-profit business model?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I'll take that. When a nonprofit, if the middle income product is a nonprofit, so in other words, if it's owned and operated by the nonprofit, you can finance 100% of it. You may be restricted on the type of financing that can get you that 100% capital stack. Versus, for example, a bank might require that equity piece, but fixed rate institutional, you can finance 100% of it. So I would ask you not to let the financing consideration hamper your determination to get it done. There are ways, creative ways with the capital stack, be it through TIF money or through tax credit money or through some kind of limited support from the non-moderate price to be able to create a financing structure that can work for you. It doesn't have to be cash equity to get it done.
Thank you. Next question. Are there any not-for-profit national providers of continuing care at home to contract with if an organization is not a life care organization already? So I'm going to go in a sideways direction first and then come back and answer that. An organization does not need to be life care to offer a continuing care at home contract. The two do not necessarily go hand in hand. There are fee-for-service communities, modified communities, that, as well as life care communities that offer these at-home products. There are many different contract options, some of which are reminiscent of a full life care agreement, and others are very different, very different. So a broad range out there. But the short answer to the question is no. All of the providers at this point are basically regional, either an individual community who does their own in their market, or there's one in Pennsylvania that does a broader market, and there's one in New Jersey that they offer through a number of different communities that are all part of one system. But you're really hitting one of my hot buttons there in terms of when everybody's creating their own continuing care at home from scratch, and they all have their own individualized branding, then it's really hard to generate that national recognition and awareness of what this is as a product line. So I would actually love to see that type of thing go forward, but I'm not aware of anything like that now. Next question would be kind of a quick one. For the continuing at home care services, is there a maximum hours per day that is covered? And that's quite honestly builds on a little bit of what I just said. There's so many different contract options and types and variances, some that cover full services, some that are co-pay, some that are limited in various ways. It's all going to depend on the particular contract option. Some do cover full live-in assistance. I think you could cover 24-hour care as well. It would be expensive, and you would have to pay upfront contractually, for a program that could afford to do that. But there are all those different types of options out there. I would not say the typical program would offer, 24-hour-a-day coverage, though. All right, this is the last question that we have right now. You have information on independent living apartment sizes. Does the panel recommend building? Okay, I have to read ahead here. I'm maybe missing a word here. I think what this means is, does the panel recommend building a certain amount of square footage on average, like per apartment unit, for common areas and support areas? In other words, a lot of times we'll say independent living is, it's going to be 100,000 square feet, and so we allow 30 or 40% of that for common areas, circulation space, amenities, and so forth. And by the way, those were made-up numbers. I'm not the architect. I'm just trying to illustrate what I understand as a question. And it continues, it says, we see for independent living and assisted living ratios in the range of 225 to 300 square feet of commons per apartment, as an example for, full life plan community. So, Craig, I'm going to point that one your way. Do you?
Thanks, anyway, Rob.
Really, but any?
Well, yeah, I think
the
traditionally, when we were doing greenfield retirement communities and they were a little bit formulaic, and we were doing 250 units, and we would typically start with a community space that was about 50,000 square feet. So that's 200 square feet per unit. I think as things have evolved and the demand for more amenities to quite honestly provide distinction or keep up with the Joneses has occurred over time, that number has crept north for life plan communities, probably closer to the 250 to 300 square foot per unit that was mentioned. For the mid-market, I think you just really want to try and start with zero and kind of add only the things that you really feel like you have to add in order to market the product, instead of starting with an X amount. I would say in general, these products are most successful when every aspect of what you use as metrics to put the project together are done with an extreme amount of rigor. So whether it's financing, contracts, operations, service packages, square footage, amenities, options for residents, all of those things, I would really recommend that you start as lean as possible, and then if it feels like it's just too lean, then slowly grow something to try and fill a specific need, as opposed to the reverse.
Great, thank you. Well, that's the end of our questions. Before we wrap up, I just want to give the opportunity, if any of our panelists have any final words or thoughts you'd like to share before we go. Beverly, are you okay? Any thoughts?
Well, the thing that's coming to my mind is that based on those responses that we saw in the very beginning, Rob, this is really a time for us as an industry to create the future. I mean, we're in the window of time where we're preparing for that huge boom of seniors coming in. All the baby boomers will be 65 plus by the year 2030. So we're in that window of planning and really thoughtful planning for their arrival and what services they're looking for. I think we have, a void in terms of consumer research of what they really would want in a housing product, and there's so much out there that we can be doing. So I think collectively, as an industry team here on this call, the future is really ours to create, and I think it's exciting, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So that's what I've been thinking while everyone's been talking. It's just a really interesting time, and time for us to get busy, right, and figure it out so that we can be ready when those folks are ready for us.
Great, thank you. Awesome thoughts. Wow, Craig and Lynn, Beverly just set the bar really high. And if you have any other thoughts to share, or we just go out on that high note.
I'm fine going on that high note. The demand is undeniable, and Bev summed it up perfectly.
Great.
Rob, I would only add that there seems to be a little bit of a perception in our industry right now of the fear of going here in terms of mid-market. And I think if collectively we can get beyond that fear and figure out a way to really do this and do this well, that it can really be kind of a watershed time frame for our industry.
Great. Agreed. So thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you to everyone who joined us today for this. And again, a recording of the entire webinar will be distributed to everyone who either attended and or signed up for this within roughly the next several days. So thank you all.